by yourself?
Yeah.
Come on in. Sign your name here?
Okay. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your donation. It's a tax deductible. You deduct your tax at the end of the year.
Okay. I am happy that I came. I learned so many additional things.
Yes, today was, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So we wear several hats around here. So we give tours, we vacuum in here, clean, we do some grounds work sometimes.
Okay.
We do some repairs,
Okay.
things that we can.
Yes.
So,
It's beautiful. I'm so thankful. I just wish the whole world could see this.
well, let me let you out.
Then we can go around to the back and see.
Yes.
So the children can see the carriage.
There's a carriage?
And she used to ride in.
Go in there and have a seat. That's where I usually start. There's the clock. 4 times. Well, this is the home of Ellen White. She lived in here from 1900 to 1915. She was 72 years old when she came here. She even died in this house at the age of 87. Before coming to live in this house, she was living in Australia for 9 years. And she felt that the Lord was calling her back. Her work in Sydney, Australia was done. So she took a boat from Sydney, Australia to San Francisco. The boat took 23 days to get here. Would you like to be in a boat for 23 days in the ocean? I don't think so. 3 days before the boat arrived here in San Francisco, she had this dream. And in this dream, the Lord told her, I have a special place prepared for you. So she was wondering where this place is going to be. She said, I'm going to start looking through Oakland. Why Oakland? Because her husband, James White, had started a publishing house in Oakland years ago. He was already deceased and dead now. And she felt that if she lived close to the publishing house, she can write her books there, have them imprinted there, and then distribute throughout the world from there. But guess what? She found the houses too expensive to rent. They cost between $25 and $30 a month to rent. She had 3 secretaries with her. Her salary was $50 a month, which was the salary of an ordained pastor. And she felt that with 3 secretaries, and if she has to pay $30 a month, she can't make ends meet. So her son Willie suggested, Mom, let's go to St. Helena and we'll continue looking for houses. They came here, they stayed at the sanitarium at the top of this hill, and she met an old friend, a lady by the name of Mrs. Ings, and she told Ellen, there's a house available at the bottom of this hill. You should go take a look at it. At the age of 72, she walked down 1.5 miles to take a look at this house. This house was built in 1885 by a man by the name of Robert Pratt. He lived in the state of Maine with 2 of his brothers. They heard about gold being discovered here in California, so all 3 brothers decided to come to California and see if they could find gold. Well, it looks like luck was on their side. All 3 brothers found gold. They became very wealthy, and Mr. Pratt also gets a job as a vice president of the Central Pacific Railroad in San Francisco, which earned him a lot of money. It cost him $12,000 to build this house. That was a fortune back in those days. He built it for 2 reasons. Number 1, to be a vacation home. Number 2, to be a retirement home. When his retirement time came, his daughters in San Francisco said, Dad, just sell that house, come and stay with us, and we'll take care of you for the rest of your life. So he sold this house to the sanitarium for $8,000. He gave him a very good discount. Mrs. White comes in here, looks at this house, and the first thing she says is, this is the house that the Lord has prepared for me. Remember that dream I told you 3 days before she got to San Francisco that she had in the boat? Evidently, the Lord showed her this house in the dream, and now that she sees it, she recognizes it. So now she wants to buy the house. Mr. Burden, who was the hospital administrator, came to see Mrs. White about her interest in purchasing this house, and she asked him, how much will you sell me this house for? He says, Ellen, you're a good friend of ours. We're going to sell it to you for the same price that we bought it, $8,000. How does that sound to you? Ms. White says, oh man, that sounds horrible. All I have is $1,000 from a house I sold in Australia. Can we work something out? Mr. Burden says, you know, Ellen, this house comes with 74 acres of land. I don't think you can ever use all that land. And the hospital needs 15 of your acres. Give us those 15 acres and we'll reduce the price down to $5,000. How does that sound to you? Ms. White says, well, I guess that's okay. So she gives her $1,000, finances the other 4, just shakes the hand, promises to pay, and she moves into this house the same day that she signs a contract. Why was she able to move on the same day she signed the contract? Because this house came completely furnished. See all those 3 pieces of furniture there? All original from 1885. It came with the organ, although that's not the original, but one very much like it. Over there, it came with the chairs, the tables, the dishes, the silverware. It came with the beds, the sheets, the blankets, the towels, the pots and pans. Came with 2 horses, 4-horse carriages, 1 cow, and a whole bunch of chickens, all for $5,000. Those days are gone. We can't find anything like that anymore. And 74 acres of land. The Lord blessed her because that was Mrs. White. Mrs. White was the Lord's messenger and faithful friend. So now that I told you about this house, I'm going to go out there and finish up about Mrs. White, okay? You probably missed the first 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
Well, here is a famous painting of Ellen White. It's an original oil painting. She was 35 or 37 years old in that painting. She was one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church along with her husband. And what started with a few people, today there are over 23 million Seventh-day Adventists around the world. These are the books that she wrote. There's 63 books here. They have been translated into more than 160 languages around the world. And she also wrote 100,000 pages of manuscripts. In the history of literature in the United States, Ellen White is the #1 author. No one has written as many books as Ellen White, or translated their books in as many languages as Mrs. White, or written as many pages as Mrs. White. Male or female, religious or secular, Ellen White is the #1 author in the history of literature in the United States. A fact that even very few, even Adventists, know that. Let me show you over here. There's 2 original manuscripts. Okay, the one on the left she wrote when she was 20 years old. Notice how beautiful that handwriting is. And she only had a 3rd grade education. The one on the right she wrote when she was 82 years old. She would then write everything by hand and give it to her secretaries. And you look, and if there was any changes that she wanted with her own handwriting in between the lines, you can see there, that's her handwriting, the changes that she wanted to have retyped all over again. The lady here is Sarah McIntyre. That was Mrs. White's secretary for 30 years. She never got married, she was single. As a matter of fact, this room here was her bedroom, and if someone knocked on the door, she would answer the door. But if you wanted to see Mrs. White, you had to have an appointment with her. Without an appointment, she would not let you see Mrs. White. And so she was very strict, very protective of Mrs. White, and she was the boss here. She ran the show. This man is Pastor Everson. Pastor Everson was about the 3rd owner of this house after Mrs. White died, and he did something wonderful when he bought this house. He made a will, and in the will he put down, when I die, I want to donate this house to the Pacific Union Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. So they are the owners of this house. The General Conference does not own this house, neither the White State is the Pacific Union Conference. Okay. That's Mrs. White's house in Australia. Every house she named, she gave it a name. Sunnyside, the house in Australia. This house she named Elmshaven. Did you see the arch?
We did.
Water elms, those are trees. There were a lot of elm trees in this property, so she named it Elmshaven. Over here is a staff people that she had. Some of them are secretaries. The majority of them are secretaries. She had both men's secretaries and women's secretary. Men's secretaries were very popular back then. But they were all single. And what happens to single people when they work together after a while? They get married. So this secretary married that secretary. This secretary married that secretary. And this secretary, he was a little wiser. He married Mrs. White's granddaughter, and he became part of the family. Mrs. White was very short. She measured 5 feet 2 inches, and when she would sit on a chair like this, her feet would usually dangle in the air. So she always needed a log or a little pew or a stool to put her feet on so that they wouldn't dangle in the air. This here is the house in 1900 when Mrs. White bought this house. That's the way it looked. Today it looks a little different. Because in this postcard, let me show you, this tower here did not exist. See, it's not on the picture. She had this tower here built 2 years after she bought this house, okay? The same year that she builds this house here, she builds this white 2-story house there. Today, Mrs. White's great-great-granddaughter lives in that house. I think it's about the time. She's just turned 70. I think this is where you came in, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
Appreciate you folks coming by.
Yeah.
85. The doorknob is the original one. Even the key is the same key that Mrs. White would use to open and close the house.
Something
Would you like to touch it and get Mrs. White's DNA out?
Sure, may I? I'm gonna hold it.
Sorry.
Yes.
The doorbell is still the original. What's your name, sweetie?
Eva.
Eva.
Ava. Ava.
Eva.
La Ava in Spanish.
Oh, that's my granddaughter's name, Eva, and my mother-in-law. Her name is Eva. Eva. Would you like to ring the doorbell, Eva? Have you had lunch?
No.
No. Yes. I hope you got some muscles. Right here. Pull that down.
Oh, my. You get a
Well, this is the living room. It wasn't called the living room back in Mrs. White's days. The word living room came in about in the mid-1950s. Living rooms used to be called the parlor, right? We don't see that word or hear that word anymore unless you go to the beauty parlor, or the men go to the tattoo parlor, or unless you go to my favorite place, the ice cream parlor. Yeah, that's the only time you ever hear the word parlor. Well, this place was important for 2 reasons. Number one, how long do you think her devotionals lasted here? Anybody want to guess?
An hour?
Pardon? 2 hours, 1 hour? Anybody else?
20 minutes.
20 minutes? Why would you say 20 minutes?
That's how long mine did.
Okay. Yes, they only lasted between 10 and 15 minutes. It made them very short. She didn't want to bore anybody. Okay.
I should remember.
One of the secretaries would play the organ. Anybody here play organ? No. They would sing a song or two, and then Mrs. White would sit down in this chair, her favorite chair, for 2 reasons. Number one, it was a rocking chair. Number two, it's very close to the ground. Your feet did not dangle in the air on that one. See? Then she would read a couple of texts from her Bible. That's her one of the 3 Bibles that we have in this house that belongs to Mrs. White. She would read a text or 2, sometimes 3, and then everybody would pray, and then they'd go to the dining table to have breakfast. During the 9 years, by the way, these tiles here, they were imported from England. And they tell the story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, a legend. These are the 9 books that she wrote while she lived in this house. Those are the book Education. You're into education, I suppose, right? Ministry of Healing, Gospel Workers, Counsels to Parents, Students, and Teachers, Acts of the Apostles, Prophets and Kings, Testimonies to the 2 wives.
Yes.
But not at the same time, okay?
Right.
Here's his first wife. His name is Mary Kelsey. Very long hair, very pretty, and he had some bright eyes. Together they had 2 girls, right here, Ella and Mabel.
Right.
See? Now, Willie and his wife and the 2 girls went to Switzerland as missionaries. She contracted tuberculosis and wound up dying 3-4 years later. Willie now was a widower. Mrs. White got shipped off to Australia, so they shipped him out too, went with her, and he was a union president over there, and he met this girl, May Lacey, They got married and had 5 more children. The first 2 were twins. Now, Mrs. White knew May Lacey because May Lacey worked for Mrs. White during the summer. She was a student out there, a college student, and it was very common for her to hire girls during the summer so that they can earn some money for tuition. Well, she liked this girl so much that she calls her, she writes a letter to her son Willie, says, "Willie, you gotta come out here and meet this girl. She would make a good wife for you." So she was a matchmaker. So he comes over, sees this girl, and he likes her. However, she had a boyfriend, but she told that to Mrs. White, and guess what Mrs. White told her? "Well, pray to the Lord about this, and maybe he'll take your love away for your boyfriend and give it to my son." Well, that's the way it happened. 4 months later, they wound up getting married. Now, something might have flown over your head when I just said this, because I told you she was a student, 19 years old. Willie was 39. He was 20 years older. So, but Mrs. White didn't care. That was her gal, and that was the way it happened. Well, they say when love is blind, I guess. But she turned out to be a very good wife, and they had a very good family. She turned out to be a good stepmother too. Well, this house was lit by these lamps. They were kerosene lamps, and they hung from the ceiling here. And they hung from the ceiling over there. That one, you had to get up on top of a ladder and put the kerosene in it, and it would last a lot longer. These other ones, you had to put a kerosene almost every day. That one maybe once a week. Okay. But in 1913, electricity came to this house, and Mrs. White was one of the first person to get electricity. She enjoyed electricity for 1.5 years before she died.
Okay.
1913.
1913. The house was already built. So guess what? Look what they did with the wires, electrical wires. They put on the outside of the wall. See that? In conduit.
Oh, that's so neat.
The kerosene lamps that were hanging here, we converted them over to electricity. That one out there, we converted to electricity also. Here are the wires through there. The whole house was that way. But look at the dining room. You don't see any more wires there. Why? Because in 1977, they made a major renovation of this house. They tore inside the ceiling to hide the wires. They tore inside the walls to hide the wires, to modernize it. So the rest of the house, you're gonna see it all modernized, except this part to show you what it was like. Unfortunately, when they put all the wires inside the walls, they destroyed the original wallpaper. So this is not the original wallpaper, but something very, very similar to what she had. You'll be hard pressed to find the difference between the two. The carpeting was also destroyed, and it was replaced with something very, very similar to what she had. Now the switch here is the original one. It's not a flip up, a flip down. You turn it. Half a turn to the right, turns the light off. Half a turn to the right, turns the light back on. The original switch from 1913, and it's still working.
Wow.
Have you heard of a man by the name of Uriah Smith?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What's he famous for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one?
Like, I forgot, like, some kind of book.
Where were I behind you? Daniel
She
and
wrote that in
Revelation.
the Revelation.
He also was the editor of the Adventist Review
Yes.
magazine for years.
Right.
Now this clock here belonged to him. So when he died, his wife decided to give this clock to Ellen White as a present. Well, this clock was built in 1880. It has never broken down.
What?
We have never put parts in this clock. It's 142 years old, and it's still working.
It was like 2 o'clock when we were still in this room a little bit ago.
Yes, it dings at the hour, whatever hour is, and every half hour in another 3 minutes it's gonna ding one time. So that lets you know it's half an hour. Sometimes it's confusing because 1 o'clock is only one ding, 1:30 is only one ding.
So you're half hour off.
12:30 is one ding, 1 o'clock is one ding, 1:30 is one ding,
Wow,
so.
that's
Okay, they don't make things like they used to, do they? Okay, let's go to the dining room, let's have some lunch.
Oh, may I ask,
Is it
Pastor?
Eva or Ava?
Ava, Pastor,
Ava.
the seat right there, is that a part of Ellen White's legacy?
That's been here so long, I don't think that's the original.
Oh.
It's, time period, because the Oregon, one of our previous tour guides out here sold the original organ because it wasn't quite working.
Oh.
And so we bought this one here, which is very much like the other one, and this was in good shape, so, I could ring the neck of the person who sold the
So,
original.
yes, it should have.
Okay. Come on this way. Well, after they had the devotional there in the morning at 7 o'clock, they would come here to have breakfast. Mrs. White only had 2 meals per day, not 3, but 2. How many of you people like to have only 2 meals a day?
Oh, doesn't matter.
Okay, the adults do, but the children don't. They want 3 meals a
That's
day.
right.
4.
And the young man might be 4, right? Yeah. She had 1 meal about, what, 7 o'clock in the morning, and the other about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was it. Mrs. White loved to eat everything that was green, like broccoli. Do you like broccoli? Green beans? You guys like green beans?
Yes.
How about Brussels sprouts?
Yes.
Spinach? Kale?
Yes.
I cook with them all the
Greens.
time.
Good. You know what her favorite was though? Dandelions. Dandelion greens.
Yes, very good for high blood pressure.
Mhm. They're kind of bitter, but that was her favorite. Anyway, Mrs. White was a vegetarian, so no meat was ever served in this table, in this house, okay? She became a vegetarian in 1868.
It wasn't
And
easy
it
for
took her
her.
3 years to convert over to vegetarianism, okay?
2:30. On the clock.
Oh, the clock just, so it's 2:30. Another half hour, it'll ding 3 times. Well, she promoted vegetarianism, and with all the studies they've made around the world about vegetarians, they've discovered that if you're a vegetarian, you're gonna live between 7 to 10 years longer. And if you're a vegan, you're gonna live up to 15 years longer. So she promoted vegetarianism for the church. The church does too, but it's not a requirement, okay? But you will have a longer life, better health in the meantime. So I think if you want to live a longer life, try being a vegetarian. Shortly after Mrs. White died, she took a picture of the same place right there where Mrs. White used to do her writing.
Very interesting.
I love the, just,
Yeah.
you get the morning sun, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
It's the morning, right?
That was Mrs. White's favorite spot.
It looks like.
You can see the windows, they have kind of a distortion.
Yes, I see that.
That's because they are the original windows.
Still, they
Still.
survive
Yes, see that?
earthquakes, everything?
Distortion.
Oh, yes, yes.
Over there, distortion. There are very few windows that we have to replace. And if you find one, maybe the one in the corner might be one that was replaced. And if there's thoroughly clear, those been replaced. But the original ones, they have
Other
a
ones,
slight
yes, I can
distortion.
see.
They didn't have the technology back then to make a flat one, yeah. Well, this is the tower that she built in 1902.
All
This
of
room
this?
did not exist.
Okay.
From that wall to that wall. And that's where Mrs. White sat to write her books. She brought that chair with her from Australia, and she wrote the book Desire of Ages in that chair,
The green chair?
the green chair. She would have to lift that lap board, sit down, and then put the lap board down, and that served as her desk. Now, when she had to travel, that was very cumbersome to take with her. It was kind of heavy, kind of bulky. So she had a much lighter one that she could handle, and it was this one here. This is where she would put her pen. It had hinges in the back, and it would hold,
Interesting.
and very lightweight, so she'd put it underneath her arm and go to a train and ride, or a restaurant, or somebody's house. See, that's her lapboard. This is her laptop. And you thought laptops were invented recently? No, Mrs. White was the first one to have a laptop.
Modern woman.
There's a picture of Mrs. White riding a horse and buggy with her secretary Sarah. Every morning around 9:30, 10 o'clock, she would go around the neighborhood visiting people. And if she found a family that was very poor, did not have much to eat, she would invite them to this house for lunch. She always told her secretaries to make more than enough food because it was white. They took her to the sanitarium, took some x-rays, and they found she had a broken left hip. There was no technology back then to fix broken hips like we have today. Today they put you bolts, screws, pins, plates, and they fix you up, put you back together. There was no such thing back then. The only thing the hospital could do for her was give her this hospital bed, and she spent her last 5.5 months on that hospital bed, and she died on the hospital bed.
That is so tiny.
Yes, you couldn't move.
It goes up and down. That was 1 week before she died. Then they sang her favorite song. You know, she had a favorite song. You all know it. The Sweet By and By. In the sweet by and by, we shall meet on the beautiful shore.
We don't see that in him. They don't sing it again.
She wanted to sing, her lips were moving, but no sound was coming out.
Oh, poor thing.
She went to bed that evening. She slipped into a state of a coma, and she remained that way for the next 6 days. At the end of the 6th day, her breathing pattern started to change. A normal breathing pattern is one breath every maybe 2 seconds. Hers was one every 5 seconds, one every 8 seconds, one every 12 seconds, until finally there was no more breath, and Mrs. White dies. Any of you here in the medical field? They call it chain stoking. Well, when Mrs. White died, her secretary was here at the foot of the bed. Her son Willie was at the head of the bed. They looked and stared at each other in kind of a state of shock. Who knows what was running across Willie's mind? Maybe my mom died. She was the messenger of the Lord.
What do we do now?
What could have been going through Sarah McIntyre's mind? Oh, my boss died, now there's no more work, I'm unemployed.
Yes.
I don't know, it's just my imagination running. Then Sarah remembered about the clock. So she gets up and goes to this clock and stops the clock at the time that Mrs. White died. Never again has that clock been put to run as a memory of the time that Mrs. White died.
Whoa.
Mrs. White died. She died though at 3:40. It took her, Sarah, 2 minutes to get over her shock and remember the clock to stop it. It was a custom back in those days. If there was a clock in the room where someone died, you would stop it as a memory of the time that the person died.
Okay.
Now pay attention to this. Yes. Mrs. White died July 16, 1915 at 3:40 in the afternoon. It was a Friday afternoon, and Mrs. White rested for the Sabbath. Who else do you know died on a Friday afternoon after 3 o'clock and rest for the Sabbath? Jesus. Same day, same time, same day, they both rest for the Sabbath. Does it sound like a coincidence? I think the Lord allowed it that way. It's providence.
So, my question is this, back in those days, what did they do to preserve the body?
Embalming. They embalmed her.
Okay.
There was a funeral in front of this house. There was 3
Yes,
of
I
them.
remember reading about them, yes.
400 people came. They were the same people that she invited home for lunch, same people that she gave material for the clothing. She was known as the little white-haired lady dressed in black who was very kind. That was her title. The second funeral was in Richmond, near San Francisco. There was a camp meeting going on, so they took her there.
Really?
And from there, they put her on her train and took her to Battle Creek. And here's our two pictures. The funeral at Battle Creek at the Dime Tabernacle. Pastor S.N. Haskell gave the funeral service. To the right is where she was buried. She requested to be buried over there. Why 2,000 miles away from here? Because her husband was already buried there.
That's right.
And her two young children were buried there.
Yes.
So she said, please take me to Battle Creek, bury me there, so that when Jesus comes for the second time and does the resurrection, we can all rise together as a family.
Wow.
So that request was granted, because that's what she asked for. So she's still there waiting for the second coming of Jesus.
Amen. Oh, beautiful.
Now, besides having a favorite color, Mrs. White, song, Ms. White had a favorite color too. You know what that was?
Black.
She was always dressed in black, but it wasn't black.
Blue.
She loved to go out in the nice blue skies every day to visit people, but it wasn't blue.
Right. Was it
She
green?
said every little girl should have a red dress,
Red dress.
but it wasn't red.
Brown. All of the colors. Brown.
It's a girl's favorite color.
Pink.
Pink, there you go. She was a lady. She loved pink. You'll see a lot of pink flowers if you go outside here. But you're gonna see this back one here. Take a look at the color of the ball, okay?
I saw it.
Take a look.
Pink. I saw it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's real marble.
That was her, she loved the marbles, right?
She loved marble.
Yes, and God gave her a whole sleeve of marble.
One of those guys, the person, one of these guys that said Jesus was coming out of the day, and then said Jesus was coming. I used to feel like one.
We should take pictures.
And what's the,
This is it.
is that some water or something like that, that's on there?
It's a hot water bottle.
That water.
So you vision.
There were about 5 or 6 ladies that lived in here. And certain times a month, they get these cramps. And so they use the hot water bottle to help them calm the pain.
I see,
Razors too.
I'm just thinking, I can't even get my household to use 3 bathrooms, how they got 6 or 7 women to 1 bathroom.
I tell you.
times were
They would
different.
have a bowl in the kitchen in every room, to wash their hands. They usually had a urinal, some sort of a pan.
Chamber.
Body pan.
Up to the bathroom, right? Yeah.
Well, imagine, the water was by gravity from the height of the earth.
Yes.
And so you didn't get a whole gush of water coming out, it was slow, so it took a long time to fill up that bathtub.
They lived right here and worked right here, so they
Mrs.
like.
White bathed every day. She
Yes,
had-
she-
she
Average
bathed
person didn't. I
cold
read what she
water
said.
every morning. And since you bathed warm water every evening.
Cold in the morning, no way.
Cold and hot. Especially up here where it gets cold.
No
Yes, it was
way
stir
would I
up.
be able to show it.
So we're the young guys.
Come guys.
No, sir,
Benjamin is a-
exactly.
Gonna give you a quiz over here.
You're giving away the answers.
No, I didn't
Give
know.
me the answers.
This is John Byington. Who's John Byington? You know who he was?
I remember. Come on, Pathfinders.
I haven't heard of that guy.
Yes,
He
you
was the
did. in
first
Pathfinder.
General Conference President.
Yes.
Joseph Bates. You
Yes.
heard of Joseph Bates?
What do you know about Joseph?
What's he famous for?
He was a sailor, right?
A sailor, a captain. What else?
Oh, did he write?
Yes. Not a song.
He brought the Sabbath truth to the church. Adventists to go to church on Sundays, just like the other churches, until someone, a lady by the name of Rachel Oakes, told him about the Sabbath. He checked it out. He says, you know, she's right. So she brings over to the Adventist church, says, we're going to church on the wrong day.
Right.
We should go to church on Sabbath. So then they studied it, they agreed with him, and Advent started going to church on Sabbath.
And then he published little Sabbath pamphlets,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Spent all his money doing that.
James White, who was he?
Ellen White's
Husband. What did he die of?
sickness.
Yes.
What's his
Yeah, you're warm.
tuberculosis?
Malaria.
Malaria.
Mosquito bit him out there in Michigan, and he got malaria and died. He had so many strokes, we thought he was going to die from a stroke,
Yes.
overworked, but he never did. He died of malaria. How long was Mrs. White a widow?
20-some, 7 years.
34 years. Close.
34.
John Loughborough. Who's John Loughborough?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that one.
I studied him, but I forgot.
He established Seventh-day Adventist churches here in this area, in the San Francisco area, because this is where the Advent work started.
Yes.
In one of his evangelistic meetings, he had a man by the name of William Pratt attended. Happened to be the brother, Robert Pratt, who built this house. He heard about the evangelistic meetings. He went and attended them. He loved what he heard, and he decided to become baptized. So, John Loughborough baptized him. Maybe that's why Robert Pratt sold this house to the sanitarium for such a cheap price, because his own brother had become a Seventh-day Adventist. Like Paul Harvey would say in the news, now you know the rest of the story. John Andrews, what's he famous for?
Starting Andrews University.
Yes, they named Andrews University
They named
after
There's
him.
a statue at my church,
Uh-huh.
and he went, and God called him, and he went with his children to
Yes.
go on
To where?
Europe
You got it.
Yes,
Yeah.
Europe.
on a
How many
He
languages did he know?
5, I think.
7. You're close.
Oh,
You know what else he did? He memorized the entire New Testament by heart. He said, if you ever lose the New Testament, I can reproduce it word for word, all out of my memory. Would you like to memorize the New Testament?
I think I know it. I know it.
We got a long ways to go, don't we?
And he was the first.
During that vision that lasted 4 hours, during those 30 minutes of that vision, someone gave her a Bible like this one. And Mrs. White took this Bible, she put it here on the left hand. She's still looking at a vision out there. She opens the Bible and points to a Bible text and quotes it without looking. She turns the pages, points into the Bible text, and recites it without looking. People get on top of chairs to see if she was really pointing to the correct text. Ladders, sometimes they had there, chairs, and guess what? She never got one single text wrong for all 30 minutes that she did this. Without looking, without breathing. How is that possible?
And it's a little lady with a big old book holding it up for her.
Wasn't she like sick and weak?
Yes, she was in a coma for 4 months. She was over sick. Here we have a Bible. This white Bible is the same size, height, and weight as the original. The original, we gave it to the white estates out there in the vault. They take it out during the day, put it in the vault at nighttime. But it weighs the same, and with the left
How
hand,
could you ever? For 30
she holds it out, opens it, points the Bible to us. Anybody want to try it? Yeah. 1959, Mr. America came over here to visit. And he happened to be a Seventh-day Adventist. Today, they pump you with steroids so your muscles are bigger, but you know, back then they didn't have steroids. But he was strong. And he held the Bible. Guess how long he lasted?
10 minutes?
2 minutes and 50 seconds. And his arm went down. I had a Russian weightlifter here from the Olympics, from the Summer Olympics. He happened to be a Seventh-day Adventist also, and he brought his weightlifting buddies here to tell them about Ellen White and the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And so he says, I want to see that Bible that Mrs. White held for 30 minutes to break her record. So I gave him the Bible. I took out my cell phone and I started recording him. Guess how long he lasted?
A minute or less.
A minute and 42 seconds. And his arm went down, he couldn't hold it. He was shaking, his face was red. His arm went down. It's impossible to do it, you can't do it. Only the Lord can.
That's right.
But when Mrs. White was not in vision, she couldn't do it. The only thing she was in vision.
She
That's like the
couldn't
Holy Spirit.
breathe. She couldn't breathe on her tongue.
Can you imagine? I can only imagine after this was all over, they would tell her, you held this Bible up for 30 minutes. Do that again. If you feel like sitting down, there's a chair there for you ladies. Nice and comfortable. You can sit on the floor.
ladies.
You can sit there.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, here's our newest display. Someone went on a computer and looked at Mrs. White's books and her writings to see what name she gave Jesus. And they're all listed in here.
What?
There's 837 names that she gave Jesus.
What?
Read through the Bible and see how many names the Bible gives Jesus. The Bible gives Jesus 159 names, but Mrs. White gave him 837 names. Like the Door of Angels, the Old Powerful Friend, the Alpha and Omega, the Finisher of our Faith, the Babe of Bethlehem, the Author of Truth, the Child of Nazareth, the Commander of the Universe. All those names she gave Jesus, 837 names. This painting here, this painting was in the house of the Kellogg's family, the one who invented cornflakes. They were neighbors with Mrs. White, Valerie. One time she visited the Kellogg's family. She saw this painting on top of the fireplace on the mantle, and she said, of all the paintings I've seen of Jesus, that's the one that resembles him the most, of whom I saw in a vision. So evidently, Ellen White saw Jesus in a vision and resembles that painting more than any other that she's ever seen. Looks very Jewish, doesn't he?
Yeah. I think I had seen the last visit I made. There was one they had downstairs in color, and we were told at that time that that was a painting of an Italian man. That and when she saw it, she said that was the closest resemblance to Jesus.
We had the painting here, but some folks started kind of kneeling down and kind of praying in front of it, so we took it out.
Really?
Give it to the White Estate.
I can't believe
People, a lot of our members were former Catholics, and so they're used to doing things like that, so. Here you go.
Next time I'll just give them.
For you two ladies.
Thank you.
Sit on the floor.
Next time I'll give them Tylenol before.
No, sit on the floor. Off my leg.
Pastor,
Yes.
my wife keeps talking to me about these spreads that are on the bed. I don't know why.
Well, there was things that they did at the time. I'm not sure. I don't think this bedspread is original. This one might be. I hear that this is original of her time period.
That is cool.
I would say quilt. Okay, 1880, right around 1880. It was this quilt made by Estelle Smith and donated by to Elmshaven. So. Get my little drink of water. Pastor Haskell was here visiting with his wife the night that this happened.
I'd like to read about it.
You know, this happened in 1907. But remember when electricity came to this house? 1913. So some people said, oh, what you saw was electric light. But no, electricity hadn't come yet, another 6 years. So it wasn't electricity, it was angels. On the afternoon of March 2nd, 1907, I spent in council with Brother and Sister Haskell, up there, discussing the work in Oakland. After our visit, I was very tired and I went to bed early because I was suffering from rheumatism on my left side and I could get no rest because of the pain. At last, I fell asleep. About 9:30, I discovered that all my pain was gone. A miracle. Then the room was filled with a light, a most beautiful, soft azure light, and I seemed to be in the arms of heavenly beings. This peculiar light I've experienced in the past, in times of special blessing, but this time it was more distinct, more impressive, and I felt such peace so full and abundant that words cannot express it. I raised myself into a sitting posture. So now she's not lying down anymore. She sits up against the bed. And I saw that I was surrounded by a bright cloud, white as snow, the edges which were tinged with a deep pink. It's her favorite color, appears around the clouds. The softest, sweetest music was filling the air, and I recognized the singing of the angels. Can you imagine? Angels surrounding this bed, singing to Mrs. White. Would you like to have angels sing to you in the bed? Then a voice spoke to me, saying, "Fear not, I am your Savior." Who else is here now?
Jesus.
Jesus is here. Along with the angels. And we're all standing here in the same room.
Wow.
Fear not, I am your Savior. Holy angels are all about you. Then this is heaven, I said, and now I can be at rest. I shall have no more messages to give. Everything will be easy, and I shall enjoy peace and rest.
She thought she was gonna die.
She probably thought she died. What else are you going to think if angels are singing to you and Jesus speaks to you? You're going to think you're in heaven too. Is this indeed heaven? Am I one of God's little children? Shall I always have this peace? The voice replied, "Your work is not yet done." What a disappointment. Now she knows she's not in heaven. She's still here, and the Lord has more work for her. Then someone passed by my door, right where you're at. Could have been Pastor Haskell, whose visit mate probably went to the bathroom. And I wondered if that person saw the light. After a time, the light passed away, but the peace remained. Isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
You know, it's one thing to read about Ellen White, study her books, and preach about Ellen White, but it's something very different to come here on this tour.
Yes.
And see that she was a real person, see the books that she wrote, the works that she did, how she treated the neighbors, how the Lord blessed her with this work that started with a handful and now there are 23 million people around the world, you know. The journeys she's made and how the Lord protected her is something very special to come on a tour.
Yes.
And I keep thinking of the words Jesus told her, "Your work is not yet done." What was Mrs. White's work? Basically two things. Number one, she would write books in the messages that she was sent by the Lord. Number two, she had to preach the second coming of Jesus until the day that he came. But did Jesus come in her lifetime?
No.
No. Do you think Mrs. White finished the work? No, she died.
Yeah.
Whose work is it now?
Ours.
Our work. From the youngest one, there you go, to the oldest one, me. Okay? We all need to talk to our friends and neighbors about the love of Jesus so that they can be saved in the kingdom of heaven also. And to me, this room here is very worthwhile coming to and visit, because you're in the same room where angels were. Jesus' angels hovered, and Jesus was. May I have a word of prayer with you folks? Let's have a word of prayer. Oh, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity that you give us here to come visit Elmshaven. Lord, I pray that after hearing what Mrs. White did and her accomplishments in life and how she treated everyone just like they were her family, I pray, Lord, that you give us your blessing and that you use us in your work the way you did her. I pray, Lord, that the peace that she felt here that night that you visited her here, that you grant us that peace in her lives. I pray, Lord, that the angels that were here be the same angels that accompany these people and these visitors on their travels and their journeys. So I pray, Lord, one more thing, that you open the windows of heaven and pour upon us your blessings. These things we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen. Well, I hope you enjoyed your tour. We have come to the end of it.
Thank you, sir.
We're not going to let you leave here empty-handed, okay? We're going to give you a brochure, one per family, and we're also going to give you a book. The younger people, we have some guides so that you can read. We want you to do two things with these books, okay? Number one, we want you to read it. Number two, when you finish reading it, give it to somebody else, share with somebody else. Let them enjoy what you read, okay? When you go back home, you tell your friends and neighbors, church members about Elmshaven, invite them to come. We do not charge anything for coming here, okay? If you would like to leave us a donation, we'd be very happy to receive one. We use your donations for flowers and gardenings and maintaining our grounds here, okay? The union pays for the big ticket items like repairs of this house. Air conditioner man that came, the air conditioner went out. But the grounds and all that, they expect us to supply for donations. So let's go downstairs and I will give you your brochure and your books, okay? I'll put them away later.
It's not because you are here, but I've been here 3 times and this is my 4th one.
Thank you. I keep getting that over and over. I enjoy doing this. Here you go, sister. Now, if you wish to make a donation, which I'm not twisting your arm or anything to do it, there's 3 ways of doing it, okay? Number 1 is